All right, today we're talking about something you might just have sitting in your kitchen pantry, Manuka honey. But we're not putting it on toast. We're going to dive deep into the actual scientific research that's exploring its potential role in cancer care, from what happens in a lab all the way to a patient's bedside.
So to get why scientists are looking in some, unexpected places, you first have to understand the sheer scale of the challenge we're up against. This number, 20 million? That's the number of new cancer cases diagnosed around the world in just 1 year, 2022. It's an absolutely staggering figure that fuels this relentless search for new ways to fight the disease and, importantly, support patients through their treatment.
And that right there is the critical point. Our modern cancer treatments, things like chemotherapy and radiation, they're incredibly powerful, no doubt, but they can also be really, really tough on the body. This quote from a 2017 research paper just hits the nail on the head. The side effects can be severe. This creates this huge need for what's called supportive or palliative care, basically finding ways to help patients manage these effects and improve their quality of life while they're going through it all.
Well, this need has led researchers to explore the natural world, taking a fresh look at traditional remedies, but this time through the really rigorous lens of modern science. And one substance that's been getting a ton of attention is a very unique honey from New Zealand.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll start with the basics, then we'll look at how Manuka honey actually performs against cancer cells in the lab. Now, the real heart of our explainer today is Section 3, which is all about its use in palliative care for real human patients. Then we'll ask if it can team up with chemo before we look at what the future might hold. It is so important to understand the difference between lab research and real-world supportive care, and trust me, we'll be super clear about that as we go.
All right, let's jump right into our first section. We are taking Manuka honey out of the world of just being a folk remedy and putting it squarely into the world of biochemistry. So what is it about this specific honey that made scientists sit up and take notice?
Manuka honey isn't like the stuff you find in that little bear-shaped bottle. It's made by bees that pollinate the Manuka tree, which is native to New Zealand. And it has this really unique chemical profile, including a compound called methylglyoxal, which is behind some of its famous antibacterial properties. It's this very distinct makeup that got researchers thinking, what else could it do?
So let's see how this builds. We're now heading into the laboratory to check out the preclinical research. And I have to be crystal clear here. What we're about to talk about involves cancer cells in a petri dish and in animal models. These are absolutely not human treatments. They are, however, the critical first steps that tell scientists where to look next. Before we get into the how, we need to understand a key term, apoptosis. It's basically a cell's built-in self-destruct mechanism. Healthy cells do it all the time when they get old or damaged. Cancer cells, on the other hand, are masters at ignoring these signals. So a huge goal in cancer research is finding a way to flip that self-destruct switch back on in those malignant cells.
So how might Manuka honey do that? Well, this slide shows one of the ways, and it's pretty darn clever. In some cancers, a protein called IL-6 acts like a key that unlocks a pathway telling the cell to just grow and grow, uncontrollably. What the research suggests is that stuff in Manuka honey can essentially gum up the lock, that IL-6 receptor, so the key can't get in. The signal is blocked, the chain reaction is stopped, and that helps slow down the cancer cell's growth.
And this right here, this shows you the effect in a living animal. In a study with mice that had breast cancer, the group that received Manuka honey had an 84% reduction in tumor growth compared to the control group. I mean, that is a huge finding in a preclinical model. And it's results exactly like this that got scientists really excited to see how this could help actual patients.
And that's our cue to shift from the lab to the clinic. This is the absolute core of what we're talking about today. The role of Manuka honey, not as a fighter that's trying to cure the disease, but as a comforter used in palliative care. The entire goal here is to help patients better manage the really difficult side effects of their main cancer treatments. The clinical research has zeroed in on some very specific and really challenging problems. We're talking about painful mouth sores or difficulty swallowing because of radiation. These are common, and they can be completely debilitating. There's also research into its use for managing odors from certain cancerous wounds. These aren't minor inconveniences. They have a massive impact on a patient's quality of life and even their ability to keep going with treatment.
This brings us to a major human study, a randomized Phase 2 trial. What the researchers wanted to know was this: if we give Manuka honey to lung cancer patients, can it help prevent or at least reduce esophagitis? That's a severe inflammation of the esophagus from treatment that makes swallowing just incredibly painful. So let's unpack these results because they're fascinating.
The main goal of the study was to see if honey lowered how patients rated their own pain. And, as you can see, there wasn't a significant difference there. But, and this is a huge but, look at that secondary goal, opioid use. This is where things get really, really interesting.
Here's the bottom line. Even though patients in both groups said their pain levels were about the same, the group taking the liquid Manuka honey managed that pain using significantly fewer opioid painkillers. In the world of palliative care, that is a massive win. Reducing a patient's reliance on opioids while keeping them comfortable is a huge clinical goal, and this study suggests Manuka honey helped them do just that.
So, if honey can help with side effects, it naturally leads to another fascinating question. Could it actually work with treatments like chemotherapy to make them even better? This idea is called synergy.
To dig into this, scientists went back to a mouse model, this time for a very aggressive skin cancer, melanoma. They set up different groups. Some mice got Manuka honey by itself, some got a chemo drug, and a third group got a combination of both.
So when it was given intravenously, the Manuka honey on its own was able to slow down tumor growth by about 33%. That's a pretty noticeable effect all by itself.
But look what happened when they combined it with the chemotherapy. The tumor growth inhibition jumped to around 61%. That shows a clear synergistic effect. The two were way more powerful together than either one was on its own.
But honestly, this is the most important finding from that entire study. The researchers wrote that while the combo was better at controlling tumor growth, the truly dramatic improvement was in how long the animals survived. Now, what does that suggest? It suggests the honey might not just be helping fight the tumor, but it could also be lessening some of the chemo's toxic side effects, helping the animal tolerate the treatment better and ultimately live longer.
Okay, so after looking at all this evidence, from the petri dish to the patient, where does that leave us? Let's put it all into perspective and talk about the path forward.
This timeline really just sums up the whole journey perfectly. For decades, we've had lab studies showing it can affect cancer cells. More recently, animal models showed it can shrink tumors and improve survival when paired with chemo. And right now, today, the strongest human evidence we have is in palliative care, helping patients feel better during treatment. The obvious next step? We need more large-scale, rigorous human trials to confirm everything we're seeing.
So, to wrap up, while Manuka honey is absolutely not a cure for cancer, the science is building a pretty strong case for it as a valuable tool in supportive care, helping to soothe the really harsh realities of treatment. And it leaves us with this incredible thought to chew on. As medicine continues to embrace scientifically proven natural approaches, could the pharmacy of the future actually include a prescription from the beehive?